my sentiments against or reservations against the position canvassed by this bill, because yes, ordinarily, when you look at the face value of this argument that a huge number of our personnel, security personnel, INEC staff, journalists are disenfranchised, but they are not totally disenfranchised. They are carrying out another essential service that adds to the value of the electoral process. So they contribute to it professionally. So bringing them to be on board the voting process, they are bound to be divided loyalty, divided interests. So it has to be approached with caution. When you allow the military, for example, to vote on election day, you are invariably asking politicians to also go to the barracks to campaign. And you can imagine the social and political implication of bringing these essential services into our electoral process. So we need their own service as neutral instruments to give credibility to our electoral process. So I would advise against adding them up to the numbers of those that participate in the election. So I want us to approach this issue with caution, because it is a recipe for crisis in the electoral process, and it also affects the integrity of the process, as it were. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Luckily enough, okay, just 1 minute, out of respect for your office.
Okay, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, thank you very much, Mr. President, for this privilege. I actually had wanted, by all means, to make a contribution here, because I believe very sincerely that if all of us are very, very sincere about deepening our democracy, then we must think about what is right for the system. There is no doubt, Mr. President, that we already have some setbacks and misgivings about these elections being clustered around one day and everybody wanting to vote. I imagine, for instance, the person who is a policeman or a security officer who is on election duty definitely cannot vote, because usually they don't post them to their stations. And I imagine also that our military men, like in other developed democracies, who may be on duty on the day in question, also don't have access to voting. And so those kind of persons are disenfranchised. But I think that the most important thing, Mr. President, is that if we can unbundle the voting arrangement, the voting process on election day, it will ease our work. And so I sincerely support this motion, not necessarily because it is in tandem with what happens in other countries. They have a hitch-free early voting in America, and it adds value to the system. It doesn't subtract from it. And so I don't think we have anything to lose if we adhere to this principle enunciated here. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much for...
I stand to support the adoption of this bill, but with a caution. And the caution has to do with our history and our level of development. We are all aware of what happened on election day in Nigeria. And we are all aware of all the troubles that go with a one-day election in Nigeria. I start to wonder, can we take that one to so many days of our life? If elections are to be held over a long period of time, is it possible for all our security apparatus, all indices of agencies to be able to control the trouble of election? And I want to say that if this bill will be adopted, we have to do it with caution, and it has to be progressive. One, I don't see a way where we do it the way they are doing it in the United States. or in developed clime. And we pray that this thing we are talking about should probably be restricted to those people who are engaged on official duty on election day, and not a generalized open voting. So, Mr. President, while I support the bill, I will want us to be cautious so that we not run from pie to fire. I rest my case.
Senator Cyril and then Senator Titus.
Colleagues to paragraph 3 of the lead debate. From my simple calculation, about 2 million, from my simple calculation of the figures shown out by Senator Yaradua, about 2 million people are disenfranchised on election day. This is a very significant number, looking at the usual gap that you normally see between the winner and the runners-up. In view of this, I would like us to take a very resolute decision on including this set of people to vote prior to the election day because of the significant number of people that are engaged. However, the only word of caution I have is that INEC must be ready to take up this task. Thank you very much.
Finally, Senator Titus.
My name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. I think this bill is one of the most progressive bill that the 10th Senate is going to attend to. I'm saying so against the backdrop of the fact that as a democratic parliament, we should always make sure that no Nigerian is disenfranchised from performing his or her civic responsibility of voting for candidates of their choice. Because it is only through imbibing and enthroning this democratic culture that will ensure the emergence of a credible, transparent, and leadership that is accountable and responsible to the yearnings and aspirations of the people, because they know that they owe or they are holding this office in trust for the people as a result of the free and fair election that they were voted into that office. So as a result of that, what this bill seeks to do is to ensure that those Nigerians that as a result of the circumstances that they found themselves working as a security man in order to guarantee the peaceful conduct of the elections, or working as a journalist to cover the elections, to report how the elections were transparent, are mostly disenfranchised as a result of the nature of the work they are doing. So what this bill seeks to do is to bring about a system of early election whereby this category of people will vote before the main election day, so that they cannot be disenfranchised as a result of the circumstances they found themselves in life. And also against the backdrop of the fact that the number of turnout over the years has been declining from 43.7% in 2015 to 27.1% in the last election. So if there's early election, at least the voter turnout will improve and also will bring a lot of credence and credibility to our elections by allowing most people to participate. I therefore support the second reading of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senate President. My name is Jimo Foloronsho Ibrahim. I represent the good people of Ondo South and Ondo States. My own contribution is to bring to the attention of the Senate that exclusion of one is terrible for democracy. What this debate seeks to achieve, and I must thank Senator, distinguished Senator Yaradua for bringing this one, is to resolve the lacuna within our electoral process that disenfranchise some of our citizens. We've tried to cover this in the Senate by setting up committee on diaspora and all that, but their legitimate right to vote, their elective democratic right to vote is inalienable, and therefore we must support this. Again, we said Nigeria is a giant of Africa. Giant in what perspective? We are giant in the economy and all that. We should also be giant in democratic process, in assuring that citizens of Nigeria have their votes captured in any electoral system. And I think that is the significance of this bill, and it cannot be overemphasized. Since you gave me 2 minutes to speak, I will round up by reminding you, Mr. Senate President, to even actually sit this very all-important debate in the jurisprudence of my Lord Justice Holmes in 1678. He said the purpose of what the court will do is nothing pretentious, is what I mean by law. The law says they must vote. Senate cannot be pretentious about that. Even if Senate decide to be, or INEC decide to be an INEC of prophecy, where they prophesize things, the prophecy of what they will do is the law. And the law is that citizens of Nigeria must vote, and their vote is inalienable, is fundamental, and is the Rubicon of democracy. On this note, I want to give the floor to my other colleagues to make their contribution. This is all important support, not only support. Thank you for filling the lacuna that have been left behind since 1960 through many democratic processes. We can be giant of Africa in our democratic process, and I urge the Senate to consider this as very fundamental. Thank you.
Seek to give room for everybody to vote in our electoral system. It is our duty to make sure that we have created avenue for every Nigerian. We bend backward so that every Nigerian can have the opportunity to vote. As presently constituted, voting in just one day, accreditation, there is just too many queues that so many other important people feel it is too tedious for them to attend. By enlarging this thing, by enlarging the days for the election and enshrining this early voting, people can vote very early, and those that wish to wait for the last date for them to cast their vote physical, that is also okay. But what we must do as Senate is to open every avenue for every Nigerian so that he can be given the opportunity to vote. Thank you. I support this bill 100%.
That we should create or make it possible for the diaspora vote and also early voting for those who carry essential duties on the day of election. In supporting this bill, all has been said, and I think it's a straightforward bill, because if we must talk of democracy that gives everybody the right to certain fundamental provisions, then we must not deny anybody the opportunity to vote if they have come of age. Because one of the greatest crimes is to deny somebody, he or she, his right to exercise the franchise to vote for who or she or whatever party they believe in. So in supporting what our brother, distinguished Senator Abdulaziz Yaradua has brought to the fore today, I want to ask every other person here to please give this bill the total support in making sure that we pass this bill as part of the requirements that the INEC will also inculcate in their approach in making sure future elections are carried out without excluding anybody. Thank you very much.
Deputy Senate Leader, look at the pros and cons. It's a good idea. It's a very good idea, but we need to understand our psyche as Nigerians. When you vote early, you keep the ballot boxes. We do hope that somebody will not go and add more ballot papers into the ballot boxes. This is a problem. It's a psyche, the way we do our things here. That's why whenever we vote, when the voting gets concluded, everybody remains there for the votes to be counted. But if you want to fail, no matter how popular you are, I mean, your people want how popular you could be, allow the vote to be counted, maybe 2 hours after the voting has concluded. You will see a different result. So this is the fear. I'm sure this is the fear people are expressing. Different from your own fear, Senator Zam, because what they are talking about is to allow those people like police, DSS to vote. They don't vote now. And sometimes they are taken to other parts of the country. Like those from Benin will be taken to maybe Nasarawa State to go and work there. So they will not be able to vote. So they want them to vote before the election. So it's on this, in this respect, I put the question. Those in favor that the bill now be read second time, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The Clerk of the Senate. A bill for an act to amend the Electoral Act number 13, 2022 to provide for early voting at elections, including criteria for eligibility, procedure at the elections, and for other related matters, 2025 second reading taken. The bill is referred to the Committee on Electoral Matters to report within 4 weeks. The Leader of Senate.
Seeks to enfranchise
Move the motion fast.
Group of Nigerians.
Move the motion. You move the motion, you may not need a seconder before you start reading your something. You move the motion fast.
Thank you, Mr. President. Correction. I wish to move a motion for the second reading of the bill on Electoral Act amendment for early voting bill. I so move.
Okay, you can now continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Permit me to lead the debate on this critical bill that seeks to enfranchise a significant group of Nigerians who, due to the nature of their duties on election days, are denied the opportunity to exercise their most fundamental democratic right, the right to vote. This very important bill that seeks to introduce early voting in the Electoral Act 2022 was read for the first time on Wednesday, the 15th day of May, 2024. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, in any democratic process, equal opportunity must be given to all citizens that participate in elections, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, religion, occupation, or socioeconomic status. This ensures the true reflection of the will of the people, thereby enhancing the stability of the democratic process. Unfortunately, a huge number of Nigerians who are involved in making Nigeria's election a success are excluded from the crucial decision-making of choosing their leaders through the ballot. Over 1 million citizens who play critical roles in ensuring the smooth conduct of the elections are disenfranchised. These include INEC officials, ad hoc staff, the security personnel, including the police, the military, and other security personnel, journalists, observers, and others who work on election day to uphold the integrity of the process are effectively denied their rights to vote. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this exclusion has characterized all elections in the Fourth Republic and became more alarming in the 2023 general elections
with over 1 million ad hoc staff, 310,973 police personnel, 93,495 military and Department of State Service personnel, 51,000 personnel from the National Security and Civil Defense Corps, 21,000 from the Federal Road Safety Corps, 11,336 from the Nigerian Correctional Service, 9,447 from the National Drugs Law Enforcement Agency, and 350 personnel from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission who were actively engaged in election activities were disenfranchised. Similarly, the Independent National Electoral Commission reported that 144,800 observers were deployed by 196 national and domestic organizations, with the implication that those citizens were also unable to vote. This is in addition to journalists and others involved in elections in various capacities. The number of those excluded from voting could change the outcomes of election results. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, the figures highlighted above makes this bill a necessity to address the disenfranchisement of eligible voters. As lawmakers, it is our duty to ensure that every Nigerian citizen, regardless of their profession or duty on election day, has the opportunity to participate fully in the electoral process. Let me emphasize that early voting has been part of the electoral legal frameworks in other jurisdictions, with its attendant huge success stories in promoting voter participation, reducing election day pressure, and increasing accessibility. In the United States, early voting varies by states, with some states allowing a few days to several weeks, up to 45 days, in advance of election day. In Australia, early voting starts about 2 to 3 weeks before the election. In Canada, early voting takes place 12 days before election day, allowing voters greater flexibility. In Germany, postal voting is initiated 4 to 6 weeks before election, enabling voters to participate ahead of time. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, early voting has also gained traction in several African countries. In South Africa, the Independent Electoral Commission allows early voting 2 days before the general election for individuals such as the elderly, disabled, pregnant women, security forces, and those working on election day. In Namibia, diplomats and election officials cast their votes a week before election day. In Ghana, early voting commences 4 days before the general election for eligible voters such as security personnel and individuals with disability. In Senegal, the Electoral Commission allows early voting few days or a week before election, depending on the circumstances. From the foregoing, countries that have adopted early voting in their electoral process tend to have higher voter turnout rate. For instance, in Ghana, 79% of voter turnout was recorded in 2020. This was also the case with voter turnout in Sierra Leone, with 84% turnout in 2018, Liberia with 75% turnout in 2017, and Senegal with 66.23% turnout in 2019. In contrast, Nigeria's voter turnout have dropped in the last 3 election cycles, from 43.7% in 2015 to 34.7% in 2019 and to 27.1% in 2023. It is therefore necessary for Nigeria to adopt early voting to enhance voter turnout, inclusivity, and electoral efficiency. In conclusion, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, this bill seeks to improve Nigeria's electoral system, aligning it with international best practices. By this bill, Nigeria can establish a more inclusive, efficient, and secure electoral process. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the introduction of early voting is not just about convenience. It is about strengthening our democracy, improving voter participation, reducing electoral violence, and making elections more efficient and transparent. By passing this bill, we'll be taking a significant step towards a more inclusive and representative electoral system that better serves the interests of all Nigerians. I urge you all to support this bill as it moves through the legislative process. Thank you for your attention. I so submit.
The floor is either to the Chief Whip, then Senator Jimo O'Brien, then Senator